The Zodiac wrote letters. Jack the Ripper wrote letters. The Axeman of New Orleans wrote a letter signed from hell. They wanted to be known. This one did not. For 10 weeks in the spring of 1946, a man in a white hood moved through a small town on the Texas-Arkansas line. He attacked 8 people. He killed 5. He never wrote a word. He never gave a name. No one ever saw his face. He left no clue, no signature, no message, nothing. And that nothing is exactly what terrified an entire city. This is the Phantom of Texarkana, the killer who gave the world nothing to remember him by. Texarkana is 2 towns wearing one name. Half of it sits in Texas, half of it sits in Arkansas. A single line down the middle of State Line Avenue divides them. In 1946, the war was finally over. The soldiers were coming home. There were dances on Saturday nights, jobs at the rail yards, young couples driving out to quiet roads to be alone. It was an ordinary American town at the most hopeful moment in a generation. People did not lock their doors. They had survived the worst thing the century could throw at them. They believed the danger was behind them now. They were wrong. The danger had not even started. It began on the night of February 22nd, 1946. Jimmy Hollis was 25. Mary Jean Larry was 19. They were parked on a secluded road just outside town. A man appeared at the window with a flashlight and a pistol. Over his head he wore a white cloth hood, a burlap sack with 2 holes cut for the eyes. He ordered them out of the car. He beat Hollis with the gun until his skull cracked in 2 places. He assaulted Larry, and then, when distant headlights appeared on the road, he vanished into the dark. Both of them survived. Both of them tried to describe him, but all either of them could say for certain was this: a man in a hood with 2 holes where the eyes should be. At first, no one understood what had happened. An assault on a back road was frightening, but it was not unheard of. The police took statements. The newspapers ran a short item. Then the town moved on. Hollis recovered. Larry was so afraid that she left Texarkana entirely, convinced the man had known her, convinced he would come back. Most people thought she was overreacting. There was no body. There was no pattern. There was only a strange and ugly night that the town wanted to forget. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. The town exhaled, and the man in the hood waited and watched the calendar and chose his next weekend. On the morning of March 24th, a passing motorist found a car parked on a back road south of town. Inside were 2 young people. Richard Griffin was 29, Polly Ann Moore was 17. They had been on a date the night before. Both had been shot in the back of the head with a .32 caliber revolver. The blood on the ground told investigators they had been killed outside the car and then placed back inside it. This time, there was no survivor. This time, there was no description. This time, there was nothing. Just 2 bodies, a quiet road, and a town that suddenly understood that the night in February had not been the end of something. It had been the beginning. Now the police saw it. Both attacks had come on a weekend night. Both had targeted a young couple alone in a parked car. Both had happened on a dark and secluded road, almost exactly 3 weeks apart. It was a rhythm. And a rhythm is the most frightening thing a killer can have, because a rhythm can be counted. The whole town began to count. People looked at the calendar and did the arithmetic. 3 weeks from March 24th was the middle of April. The next weekend after that felt like a held breath. Parents stopped letting their children go out at night. Couples stopped driving to the quiet roads. And still, everyone knew. Somewhere out there, a man was also counting the days. It happened on the weekend they feared. Paul Martin was 16 years old. Betty Jo Booker was 15. They were not a couple driving to a lover's lane. They were two church-going teenagers, friends since childhood. Betty Jo played saxophone in a dance band, and that Saturday night she had a gig. Paul picked her up after the show to drive her home. They never made it. Their bodies were found the next morning in Spring Lake Park on the Texas side of town, each a long distance from the car and from each other. Both had been shot with the same .32 caliber revolver. They were the youngest victims. They were the most loved, and their deaths broke something in Texarkana that never fully healed. When they searched the scene, one thing was missing: Betty Jo Booker's saxophone. The instrument she had carried that night to play her last show was gone, taken from the scene, and for months no one knew where it was. It became, for the town, the small, unbearable detail. The thing that made the horror specific, not a statistic. A 15-year-old girl and her saxophone. The instrument was finally recovered that autumn, found discarded in the woods, miles from where she died. Betty Jo had been a winner of scholastic and musical prizes, a former Little Miss Texarkana, an officer in her school band. The Phantom did not write letters. He did not need to. He took a saxophone from a 15-year-old girl, and a town remembered it for 80 years. After the deaths of Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker, the killer finally got a name. But he did not choose it, and he never used it. The local paper, the Texarkana Gazette, called him the Phantom Killer because he seemed to strike and then dissolve into nothing. Because the attacks fell near the full moon, the national press called the crimes the Moonlight murders. Reporters poured in from across the country. The story went out on the wires, and a town of 50,000 people found itself at the center of the most frightening manhunt in America. The man had still said nothing. He had still shown no face. The legend was being built entirely out of his silence. What happened next is the part that gave the case its name. As the sun went down each evening, Texarkana shut itself in. Hardware stores sold out of guns, ammunition, locks, and window latches. Men sat up all night on their porches with shotguns across their knees. Families nailed their windows shut in the April heat. The streets, normally full on a Saturday night, were empty by dark. People did not just fear the Phantom, they dreaded the sundown itself. The moment the light failed and the long night began. An entire American city had been pushed indoors by a man no one could describe. He had taken something from every single person in town, and most of them he never even touched. The Texas Rangers came. At their head was Captain Manuel Gonzaullas, known across Texas as Lone Wolf, a famous, charismatic lawman in a white hat who had hunted outlaws for decades. He flooded the town with officers. He set traps. He parked unmarked cars on the lovers' lanes with armed detectives lying low inside them, hoping the Phantom would approach and reveal himself. The whole region was watching. At one point, neighbors reported strange lights flashing at an isolated farmhouse, and police surrounded it, only to find Gonzaullas himself and a photographer from Life magazine taking pictures of an old crime scene with flashbulbs. The most famous ranger in Texas, with every resource the state could give him, was hunting a man who left no trail at all. The plan was simple and desperate. If the Phantom hunted couples in parked cars, then the police would give him couples in parked cars. Decoys. Officers and volunteers sat in vehicles on the dark roads, night after night, waiting to be approached. Young officers posed as lovers. The town held its breath through every weekend, waiting for the rhythm to strike again. But the Phantom did not come to the traps. Whether he sensed them or simply changed his mind, no one knows. When he struck for the last time, he did not go to a lover's lane at all. He did something no one had prepared for. He broke his own pattern, the one thing that had made him predictable. And in breaking it, he slipped away forever. On the night of May 3rd, the violence came indoors. Virgil Starks was 37 years old. He was sitting in his farmhouse north of town, reading the newspaper, the radio on, his wife Katie nearby. He was not on a back road. He was not a teenager. He was a married man, safe, he thought, inside his own home. The attacker stood outside the front window in the dark and fired twice through the glass, killing him where he sat. This time, the weapon was a .22, not the .32 of the earlier murders. But the tire tracks outside matched, and the town had no doubt. The Phantom had changed everything: the place, the victim, even the gun. The only rule was that there were no rules anymore. Katie Starks heard the glass break and her husband fall. She ran for the telephone to call for help, and as she reached it, the man outside fired through the window again, twice, striking her in the face. Somehow she didn't die. Somehow she got to her feet, got out of the house, and ran bleeding across the dark fields to a neighbor's farm for help. She survived. And like every survivor before her, she could tell investigators almost nothing about the man who did it. A shape outside a window. A flash. The dark. Katie Starks lived the rest of her life as proof that the Phantom was real, and proof of how little anyone would ever know about him. May 3rd, 1946 was the last attack. There was no warning that it would be the last. The town braced for the next weekend, and the one after that, counting the way it had learned to count. But the rhythm simply stopped. No more couples on the back roads. No more bodies at dawn. No letter explaining why. No taunt. No farewell. No final cipher. The Zodiac, years later, would stop the same way. A sudden silence after a season of terror. But the Zodiac left behind a stack of letters in his own hand. The Phantom left behind nothing at all. He did not even leave us the certainty that he had stopped because he wanted to. He simply was there, and then he was not. There was one real suspect. His name was Youell Swinney, a career criminal with a record of car theft, counterfeiting, and burglary. An Arkansas officer named Max Tackett had noticed a strange detail. Before each of the murders, a car had been reported stolen and then abandoned afterward. Following the stolen cars led police in July to a woman who said she was Swinney's girlfriend, and she knew things. She described details of the murders that had never been released to the public. For a moment, it seemed the case was solved. Investigators believed they finally had the Phantom. But belief is not the same as proof. And what happened next is the reason the Phantom of Texarkana has no name to this day. The case against Swinney rested almost entirely on his girlfriend's statement. Then her story began to change. The details shifted, and then she married him. Under the law, a wife could not be forced to testify against her husband. The one witness who could place Youell Swinney at the murders was now silent and could not be made to speak. Prosecutors looked at what was left, circumstantial, contradictory, unprovable, and decided they could not win. Swinney was never charged with the murders. Instead, he was sentenced to life in 1947 as a repeat car thief. He was released in 1973. He died in 1994. He never confessed. He may have been the Phantom. He may have been a thief in the wrong place. The marriage that silenced one witness silenced the entire case. Think about what the Phantom never did. He never wrote to a newspaper. He never sent a cipher. He never signed a symbol or claimed a body count or asked to be understood. He wore a sack over his head so that not one of his victims could describe a face. He is the opposite of every famous killer who came after him. The Zodiac wanted to live forever in his own words. The Phantom wanted to leave no words at all. And here is the terrible truth of it. It worked just as well. A town of 50,000 people armed itself, shuttered its windows, and dreaded the falling of the sun, all because of a man who told them nothing. The silence was the weapon. The emptiness was the message. We fill the dark with whatever we fear most, and the Phantom understood that better than any letter writer ever did. We say their names. Richard Griffin, 29 years old. Polly Ann Moore, 17 years old. Paul Martin, 16 years old. Betty Jo Booker, 15 years old, who carried her saxophone into the dark. Virgil Starks, 37 years old, killed in his own home. And we remember the ones who lived and carried it. Jimmy Hollis. Mary Jean Larry, who ran and never came back. Katie Starks, who crossed a field in the dark so that someone would know. The Phantom gave us no name to remember him by, so we will remember theirs instead. He wanted to be nothing. We will let him be nothing. The names that matter are the ones he tried to erase. The Phantom of Texarkana was never caught, never named, never seen. The case is still technically open. If you have a theory about who he was, Youell Swinney or someone the town never suspected, write it in the comments. And if you want more cases from the years when America first learned to be afraid of the dark, subscribe to The Cold Lamp. The next case is closer to home than you think. We will see you there.